Margaret Bruegel is the owner of Rue Haven, which is certified organic by the Northeast Organic Farming Association of New York, and is certified organic LLC for eggs, meat, chickens, turkeys, ducks, goose, goats, pigs, and pullets. And over 10 years ago, she discovered a small article reporting that conventional chickens were fed arsenic. And that was the beginning of Margaret's organic transformation and the search to produce the ultimate healthy chicken. She says, if you are still eating conventional chicken, make this one change in your life this year. That's from her Facebook page. One of her goals is not just raise good food with sound ecological practices, but enable others to do so as well. Not only does she sell eggs to eat, but also eggs to hatch. She offers chickens to raise along with the certified feed to raise them on. She's had at least 24 people, maybe more, that she's already trained to raise their own birds from peeps to plates. With that, Margaret Bruegel.
The topic of GMOs is complex and highly technical, and can really only be presented as a high-level overview in a 10 or 15-minute presentation. In the spirit of openness and transparency, I do want to inform you that I have been trained by Jeffrey Smith in the Institute for Responsible Technology as a speaker on behalf of GMO issues. I have also personally experienced significant health problems as a result of eating genetically modified foods, and have seen, as a result of changes in my diet, have witnessed relief from many of those problems. I'm very open about my health concerns, and if anybody wishes to speak to me about it later, please approach me. And finally, I am a certified organic farmer and fully comply with the requirements of the National Organic Program Final Rule. Therefore, I am not without bias on this topic. Disclaimer's done, I'll move on. In 1996, FDA scientists warned that genetically engineered foods could create allergies, toxins, new diseases, and nutritional problems. But the person in charge of policy at the FDA, Monsanto's former attorney and chief lobbyist, and later their vice president, ignored the scientists' reports and allowed GMOs on the marketplace without a single required safety study. A review of animal studies by the American Academy of Environmental Medicine showed that genetically modified food is linked to infertility, immune problems, accelerated aging, organ damage, and gastrointestinal problems. The Academy's paper, Genetically Modified Foods Position Paper, of which most of you should have a copy of here, outlines many of the concerns that prompted thousands of physicians to advise their patients to stop eating genetically modified foods, and inspired millions of Americans to actively avoid them. Both consumers and doctors report dramatic recoveries from a variety of symptoms. The same type of problems that get better in humans are those that also get better with livestock, pets, and laboratory animals that are switched to non-GMO foods. Since GMO foods entered the marketplace in 1996, many health problems have skyrocketed. And while increasing disease rates do not imply causality, it is important to raise the question. Some of the health concerns that have been implicated in GMO food consumption include the following. Gastrointestinal disorders are the primary concern, including irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, leaky gut, which is probably the illness of the age. Thyroid disease, allergies and autoimmune disorders, diabetes, hormone imbalance, and everything that comes with a disrupted hormonal system, including insomnia. Reproductive disorders. Think about on every corner, it seems, there's an infertility clinic. Miscarriages. Also, obesity, fatigue and lower energy levels, behavior problems, skin disorders, anxiety and depression, autistic symptoms, kidney disease, and acid reflux. As part of my training, I received a set of files including charts which showed the incidence of rates of disease since 1976 overlapped on a chart of the rates of applications of Roundup on agricultural fields. If anyone is interested in a copy of those charts, I'd be glad to email them to you. Give me your email address or send me an email, and I'd be glad to forward them to you because they are really quite stunning. If we look just alone at the rates of autism since 1975, when I was a girl growing up in the 70s, the rate of autism was 1 in 5,000. By 1996, that rate had gone up to 1 in 2,500. By the 2000s, it was 1 in 500, and today it's 1 in 50. Dr. Stephanie Seneff, an MIT researcher, says by the year 2025, it could well be that 1 in 2 boys will have autism. What are the impacts on that in our health system, folks? Just to consider it. So, how is it that GMOs can cause or contribute to such a variety of disorders? There are 3 main ways that we can attempt to explain the variety of symptoms. The first way is to look at the process of creating a genetically modified crop, which John did very well in his explanation of the gene gun and the bacteria and things like that. This process of creating a genetically modified organism causes massive collateral damage to the plant, which then increases toxins, allergens, and carcinogens. Results from this process may include unpredicted changes in DNA and plant composition, including mutations, deletion of genes, permanent activation or deactivation of genes, and alterations in how genes are expressed. Recent DNA sequencing on genetically modified crops has found unexpected gene fragmentation throughout the plant. What do you suppose that does? DNA changes can alter RNA, if we take ourselves back to high school biology, and mutated proteins, which are pumped out continuously, can change the genetic code through subsequent generations. We're not talking our own health here. We're talking the health of our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come. Dr. Arpad Putzai's studies, when rats were fed genetically modified potatoes, they developed precancerous cell growth in the digestive tract, smaller brains, livers, and testicles, atrophy of the liver, and immune system damage. By the second generations, the rats were no longer able to breed. That's not a problem, right? The second way to explain some of the health risks of GMOs is in understanding the impacts of inserting Bt toxin into plants. On the surface, it sounds like a great idea. Make the plant toxic to the bug, it'll just kill them, right? Inserted genes from soil bacteria produce an insect-killing poison in every cell of the plant, including the corn you eat, and your high fructose corn syrup, which is in just about everything we consume. BT is associated with allergic and toxic reactions in humans and animals, and may well be responsible for creating havoc in our digestive system. It kills insects by poking holes in the walls of the intestine, which then allows pathogenic bacteria to escape into the body cavity. BT is indeed a naturally occurring microorganism in the soil. However, BT cotton produces 4,000 times the amount of BT that naturally occurs in the soil. BT corn produces close to 17,000 times the amount of BT that naturally occurs in the soil. You're eating that in your cornflakes, folks. Makes you hungry, right? The third way that we can explain some of the health risks of GMOs is by understanding how Roundup or glyphosate works. Glyphosate acts as an antibiotic in that it blocks the functioning of essential minerals such as calcium, iron, zinc, sulfur, cobalt, manganese, and magnesium from the plants in the soil. These are critical minerals for our health, not just plants' health. Through this chelation process, glyphosate dismantles the plant's defenses by destroying beneficial microorganisms, depriving the plant of essential nutrients. Remember, it blocks the functioning of those nutrients, and promotes pathogenic organisms which attack the plant and produce deadly toxins. In animals, and presumably humans, glyphosate suppresses digestive enzymes and allows overgrowth of harmful negative gut bacteria. Gut bacteria is important to understanding gastrointestinal and immune health, and is thought to be responsible for leaky gut syndrome, which we are just now learning to discover is so important for our overall health. Some studies, recent research from Stephanie Seneff, an MIT researcher, indicates that glyphosate blocks gut bacteria from producing L-tryptophan and other essential amino acids needed for the production of serotonin, melatonin, and dopamine. Low serotonin contributes to difficulties with behavior, anxiety, and depression. Low dopamine is associated with Parkinson's disease. The only published human feeding experiment revealed that the genetic material inserted into genetically modified soy transfers into bacteria living inside our intestines and continues to function. This means that long after we stop eating genetically modified foods, we may still have genetically modified proteins continuously produced inside us. Roundup is also used as a ripening agent for wheat, barley, lentils, sweet potatoes, and sugarcane. And is used to, in this process, it promotes dieback and drying, and makes harvesting much easier. It's sprayed directly on the plants just prior to harvest and is present in the final food product. Yum. Studies indicate cancer, reproductive problems, endocrine disruption, toxicity, and birth defects are all possible impacts from consuming foods containing glyphosate residues. The biotech companies claim that glyphosate breaks down in the soil and is harmless. However, toxicology research indicates that not only can it remain in the soil for many years, it reduces trace mineral availability, affecting the nutritional value of crops, as Dr. Titus indicated, remains present in the plants. The food produced by the plants has contaminated our groundwater and is present in our bodies and fetal blood. John did a really great job outlining some of the environmental concerns. I just want to re-emphasize that the issues with plant and insect resistance is really critical. There has been no research done on seeking out alternative herbicides to Roundup or any of the more recent versions of herbicides that they are now introducing and which have been approved. Cross-pollination with other crops seriously can affect biodiversity, and that's really a critical issue. Some of the current assessments of genetically modified foods are really telling. There is currently no post-marketing surveillance of these crops. There's been no research done on the amount of glyphosate residues in your food. There have been no human trials done. No proper evaluation of plant changes or the effects of these genetically modified organisms on the plants. Approvals are based on disproved or untested assumptions. And there have been no industry-wide studies. The safety studies funded by biotech companies are widely criticized as rigged to cover up problems. And when independent scientists do discover problems, they're typically attacked, threatened, or fired. The biotech companies are indeed very clever, and as John indicated, they have high-level employees and lobbyists heading up each of the major regulatory agencies in our country. Since GMOs offer no real consumer benefit, if even a small percentage of shoppers avoid GMO brands, we can create a tipping point of consumer rejection to force them out of the market. This has already happened in Europe. When Europe required genetic labeling, people made a choice and they voted with their dollars and basically put GMOs out of consideration. 68 countries around the world now require labeling. Why not the US? If anyone has any questions regarding the position paper, there's a list of references for more information, websites you can go to on the back page. I am not only the president of the Fredonia Farmers Market organization, but I am a year-round vendor at the market. I'm there every single Saturday. The winter market is now on at the Masonic Lodge. Feel free to come visit me and ask questions. I'm more than happy to help mentor people through the process. I started my own personal journey with one food item and just kept increasing from there. If I can do it, you can do it too. Better health to all of you.
How does an organic farmer, let's say, who has a wheat field, a corn field, and right next door you have a farmer who's growing GMO seeds, how do you prevent GMOs, or can you, from cross-pollinating your crop?
Yeah, it's a good challenge, and I have a number of colleagues who face that challenge every year, especially out here in grape country. Anybody who knows Craig Lemke, he's got an organic grape farm, right, and he's completely surrounded by non-organic farms. It is a challenge for us. We're required to maintain boundaries all around our property that is sort of a crop-free zone that is supposed to alleviate some of that drift problem, but for many farmers it continues to be a problem, I know. We're pretty fortunate where we are up in Forestville. Nobody else wants to be up there, so and we don't grow those crops. I also know some organic farmers who just won't grow corn. because they can't maintain those kind of boundaries. And it is difficult. You really have to be cognizant of wind direction and, you know, location of crops. My friends, the Thorpes if anybody's familiar with Thorpes Organic Farm up near Buffalo, they have a citric orchard in Florida, and they have a whole boundary around their citric orchard because they're surrounded by other conventional orchards, and those crops cannot be sold as organic. They're sold as border crops. So, you know, they may or may not contain chemicals that have been sprayed on the conventional fields.
I was wondering, you claim there's been no human studies, then how do you extrapolate all these things are causing all these problems in studies?
Here's the difficult thing.
Repeat the question.
Okay, so the question is, if there's no human studies, how can we extrapolate? So a lot of it is still guesswork, certainly, but there have been a number of animal studies done, and the change is so dramatic when you take an animal off genetically modified feed. The changes in their health are so dramatic that if that's the only variable, then that's the conclusion they come to. Here's the problem with doing really adequate research. On the tags of feed from Monsanto, it states right on the tag that the buyer may not use this seed for any type of research or for comparison against other similar crops. So number one, that's the first problem. The second problem, and Monsanto owns the patent for the seed, right? Remember we said these are very clever corporations. So that's the first problem. The second problem is, in order to have a control group, you need to have the original seed that is not from which the genetic modification was derived. So an untreated seed. Monsanto owns that seed. They won't release it. What they're doing is they're doing all of their own research and reporting the findings that they choose to release. That's the problem with doing adequate research on this. There.
Any other questions?
Judy.
My question has to do with the labeling. This is to both of you. That I kind of feel like if I want to eat GMOs, I might not have a problem with it. But Gloria might. So why don't they label? I mean, I just bought some almond milk and it was clearly labeled, no GMO. Why, and what can we do? Do you have any advice of what we can do?
How many billions of dollars do you have available to put out for this?
Repeat the question, please.
The question was, why can't we just have everything labeled, right? And on the surface, for most of us, it seems pretty simple, doesn't it? It's pretty black and white. But when we look at what happened in Europe, they labeled GMO food in Europe, and people stopped buying it. That's going to put Monsanto and Dow and everybody else out of business because it will mean the end of GMOs, basically. And, you know, big profits are at stake here.